There is nothing more solitary than being innocent in a world that has already decided your fate. For years, Evelyn Grace had taught the children of the Montana Territory, and in a single afternoon, their parents called her a thief and cast her out into the wilderness to die. Now, she is holed up in an old trapper's cabin, watching the snow pile up against the door, praying the blizzard will keep her safe. Then she hears the crunch of boots outside. A man's voice cuts through the wind. The cabin belongs to him, a mountain man the whole territory whispers about, a man with blood in his past. But Cole Anders isn't there to hurt her. He knows the truth about who stole the money. The question is, will he help her prove it before the men hunting her arrive? Before we return to the story, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, be sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I have something very special in store for you. 5 days earlier, Pine Ridge had been Evelyn's home. Evelyn Grace stood before the one-room schoolhouse, chalk dust settling on her navy wool dress as she wrote the day's arithmetic problems on the board. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching the golden light of late autumn that made the Montana Territory seem almost gentle before winter bared its teeth. 12 children sat at their desks. They ranged from 6-year-old Samuel Porter, with his gap-toothed grin, to 15-year-old Mary Rutkins, who stayed after most days to help clean the slates. "Now," Evelyn said, turning to face her students, "who can tell me what 8 times 7 is?" Hands shot into the air. She called on little Emma Ridley, whose father, Thomas, owned the general store. The girl's face lit with pride when Evelyn praised her correct answer. These were the moments that gave Evelyn's life meaning. To see young minds grasp a new concept, to watch confidence bloom where uncertainty had once taken root. She had been teaching in Pine Ridge for 3 years, ever since she'd arrived from Helena with nothing but 2 suitcases and a letter of recommendation from the Territorial Board of Education. At first, the town had been skeptical. She was only 24 at the time, unmarried and living on her own. But she had earned their trust with patience and a genuine care for their children. The school became her sanctuary. These students, her purpose. After her mother died of a fever when Evelyn was 12, her Aunt Margaret had raised her with stern practicality in a small Kansas town. Her mother had also been a teacher, beloved by her students, and Evelyn had promised, standing by her graveside, that she would follow that same path. The silver locket around her neck, the only thing of value her mother had owned, held a tiny photograph of a woman with kind eyes and dark hair just like Evelyn's. She touched it often, drawing strength from the connection. Pine Ridge was a hardscrabble town of about 200 souls, built where the railway spur ended and the mountains began. Most of the men worked in timber or mined in the surrounding hills. The women made do with what they had, which was never quite enough, but somehow always was. On Sundays, nearly everyone gathered at the white clapboard church, where Reverend Miller preached of forgiveness and frontier justice in equal measure. The town had its characters. Sheriff John Dalton, a lean man in his 50s with threads of gray in his dark hair, kept order with a quiet authority won through fairness, not fear. The widow, Martha Hayes, ran the boarding house and knew everyone's business, though she was kind beneath her gossiping nature. And then there was Thomas Ridley. Ridley had inherited the general store from his father 5 years ago. He was a man of 40, with soft hands, thinning hair, and a lingering smile that never quite reached his eyes. He had shown an interest in Evelyn from her first week in town, stopping by the schoolhouse with donations, offering to carry her parcels, suggesting tea at the boarding house. She had politely but firmly refused. She had no interest in marrying, certainly not a man whose attentions felt more like acquisition than affection. His interest had gradually curdled into something harder. Small slights, overcharging for goods, forgetting to order the school books she'd requested. Nothing she could formally complain about, but enough to set her on edge. She began to shop at the smaller mercantile across town whenever she could. 3 weeks before it all fell apart, she was walking home late after preparing her lessons when she saw something odd. Ridley was in the alley behind his store, speaking to three rough-looking men she didn't recognize. Their clothes were worn, their manner tense as they counted a wad of cash into Ridley's hand. When Ridley saw her, his expression flashed with something dark before it smoothed into his practiced smile. "Good evening, Miss Grace. Just finishing up some business." She had nodded and walked on, thinking little of it. Merchants dealt with all sorts. But the memory lingered, unsettling her in a way she couldn't name. The day it happened was a Tuesday in late October. The church had held a community fundraiser the week before, a box social to raise money for a new church bell. Evelyn had helped organize it, counting the donations with Reverend Miller and Sheriff Dalton. The ornate iron lockbox was heavy with coins and bills when they stored it in the church office. $347, a small fortune for Pine Ridge. On Tuesday morning, Reverend Miller discovered the lockbox had been pried open and the money stolen. By noon, suspicion had somehow fallen on Evelyn. She learned later that Ridley had mentioned seeing her near the church late Monday night. Others confirmed it. Yes, Miss Grace had been there late. What was she doing? The schoolhouse was in the opposite direction of her room at the boarding house. She had been returning a hymnal she'd borrowed, nothing more. But in the telling and retelling, an innocent fact twisted into a sinister insinuation. She was single, wasn't she? Likely had debts. Single women always needed money, and there was a certain pride about her, wasn't there? Something that kept her apart. The accusations came like a flood. She tried to defend herself, standing in the church as the townspeople she had served, whose children she had taught, stared at her with hard eyes. Sheriff Dalton searched her room at the boarding house while she trembled in the parlor. He found nothing, because there was nothing to find. But the absence of proof did not mean innocence in the minds of the mob. It only proved she had hidden it well. "Give us the money back," Reverend Miller said, his voice heavy with a disappointment that cut deeper than any anger could. "Just return what you took, and we can begin to heal." But she had taken nothing. She said so until her voice was raw. No one listened. Dalton looked at her with something like sympathy, but also resignation. With no proof on either side, and the money still missing, what could he do? The town wanted its justice. "I suggest," Dalton said finally, "that you leave Pine Ridge today, for your own safety." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. She packed her things in 20 minutes. Her clothes, her mother's locket, her teacher's Bible, the small slate she'd used in her first classroom. Martha Hayes at least helped her, though even the widow's eyes held a flicker of doubt. Evelyn left money for her room, though her savings were nearly gone, and then she walked out of town. She'd meant to make it to the next settlement, 20 miles east, but the temperature plummeted, and heavy, snow-laden clouds rolled in. She'd been raised in Kansas, a hard frontier, but a Montana winter was a different beast entirely. When she spotted the old cabin nestled in the pines, half hidden and clearly abandoned, she almost wept with relief. The cabin was a single room, perhaps 12 feet square, with a stone hearth and chinks in the log walls that let in drafts of frigid air. Someone had built it with care, but time had worn it down. She found a few old traps, some rusted tools, a moth-eaten blanket. She gathered what firewood she could before the snow began to fall in earnest, then rationed the few provisions in her satchel. 3 days alone. 3 days watching the snow pile higher, nursing a fire that always seemed on the verge of dying, wondering if she would freeze before anyone found her. 3 days replaying every interaction with Ridley, every moment in town, trying to understand how her life had unraveled so completely. She prayed, though she wasn't sure anyone was listening. She wrote in the margins of her teaching Bible, trying to document the truth, in case someone found her body in the spring. She touched her mother's locket and whispered apologies for failing to honor her memory. Then, on the fourth night, with the storm howling and the fire down to glowing embers because her wood was nearly gone, she heard it. The crunch of boots outside, heavy, deliberate, sinking into the deep snow. She froze, her breath catching as a shadow passed the single grimy window. Then the voice came, low and rough. "No use pretending. I can smell the fear and the wood smoke." The door rattled in its frame. The man was right outside. She scrambled to the opposite wall, clutching the rusted skinning knife she'd found among the tools. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst. After all of it, the accusations, the flight, the cold and hunger, was this how it ended? Murdered by some mountain hermit in a forgotten cabin? "I don't want any trouble," she called out, hating the way her voice trembled. "I'll leave. Just let me wait until morning." A pause. "Storm will last another 2 days at least. You wouldn't make it an hour out there." Another pause. "Name's Cole Anders. I know you from town. Evelyn Grace, the schoolteacher." Her grip on the knife loosened slightly. He knew her name. That could be good, or it could be very, very bad. "How do I know you won't hurt me?" she asked. "You don't. But if I meant to hurt you, I'd have done it already. I'm cold, and this is my cabin. Now open the door, Miss Grace. We're going to have a talk." She stared at the door for a long moment, weighing her options. Stay and face the unknown man, or flee into the deadly storm. Neither offered safety. But at least in here she had walls and a fire. Her hand trembled as she lifted the wooden bar and pulled the door open. The man who stepped inside brought the winter in with him. Cole Anders was not what Evelyn had expected, though she couldn't have said what that was. He was well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders beneath a heavy, ice-caked bearskin coat. His face was weathered like old leather, creased by years and hardship, and a thin scar ran from his left temple to his jaw. Dark hair, streaked with gray, fell to his collar, and his beard was thick and untamed. But it was his eyes that held her. They were pale gray, sharp as a winter sky, and they took in everything in a single glance. He entered the cabin with the economic grace of a predator. Every movement was purposeful. He kicked the snow from his boots, shrugged off his pack, and scanned the room with those calculating eyes. His gaze lingered on her meager supplies, the dying fire, her own gaunt face. "You're in a bad way," he said. It wasn't unkind, merely a statement of fact. Evelyn kept the knife visible but lowered it. "I've been managing." He moved toward the hearth, and she tensed, but he only knelt to examine the embers. "You're burning your wood wrong. Too fast, too hot. Won't last the night like this." He began to expertly rebuild the fire, adding logs from his own pack in a careful structure. "Wood needs air to burn right. but not so much it gets away from you. She watched him work, unsure if she should speak or remain silent. He seemed to expect neither. I didn't steal that money, she said finally, the words rushing out, because she couldn't bear for one more person to think she had. I know. He didn't look up from the fire. The two words stunned her more than any accusation could have. What? I said, I know. He struck a flint, coaxed the kindling to flame, and sat back as the fire caught properly. The warmth that radiated out was already stronger than anything she'd managed in 3 days. He finally looked at her. I was in town that day. Saw a few things. Evelyn's legs felt weak. She sank onto the rough-hewn bench against the wall. You saw what happened? Not the theft itself, but I saw Thomas Ridley, nervous as a cat in a thunderstorm. The morning they found the safe broken into. Cole pulled off his gloves, revealing scarred, capable hands. He was skulking around near the church when decent folk were still in their beds. When he realized I was watching him, he nearly jumped out of his skin. Why? She asked, the question coming out sharper than she intended. Didn't you tell anyone? Cole's expression did not change. Tell who? The sheriff? The town council? And say what? That I, a man most folks avoid, saw their respected shopkeeper near a church? He shook his head. My word is worth less than spit in Pine Ridge. Besides, it was none of my business. It became my business when they accused me. Her voice broke despite her effort to control it. It became mine. He pulled jerky from his pack and a small sack of cornmeal. He set them on the table without ceremony. You're hungry. Eat. Pride warred with hunger. Hunger won. She took a piece of the dried meat, forcing herself to chew slowly, though she wanted to devour it. The salty, smoky flavor was almost overwhelming after days of near starvation. Cole walked around the cabin with the familiarity of an owner, checking the walls, the roof beams, the shutters. I built this place 8 years ago, he said. Used to hunt up here before I decided staying put made more sense than wandering. I come up once a month or so, make sure it's still standing. I'm sorry for the intrusion. The words felt inadequate. You needed shelter. I understand need. He took a tin cup from his pack, filled it with snow, and set it near the fire to melt. What I don't understand is why you ran in this direction. There's nothing out here but mountains and winter. I wasn't planning on staying. I was trying to get to the next town. She wrapped her arms around herself. The storm came in faster than I expected. Montana doesn't wait on expectations. He poured the melted snow from the cup into a small pot, adding something from a flask. Tea, she realized, as the scent of pine and something bitter but bracing reached her. He handed her the cup. Drink. You're half frozen. The heat of the tin cup was an almost painful shock to her frozen hands. She took a sip. Why are you helping me? She asked. Cole was silent for a moment, staring into the fire. Because I know what it's like to be judged for something you didn't do. And I know what it's like to be guilty of things you did, and have nobody care about the difference. He looked at her then, and something in his expression was terribly sad. The world has little mercy. I figure I can spare some when it's needed. Do you believe me? Just like that? I believe what I saw. Ridley isn't a good liar. Not with his body, anyway. He was guilty of something that morning. Cole drew his hunting knife, and Evelyn flinched back before she could stop herself. He noticed, sighed, and simply used it to slice off a piece of jerky for himself. I'm not going to hurt you, Miss Grace. If that was my intent, we wouldn't be having this conversation. She nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. I'm sorry. I don't know who to trust anymore. Smart, he said, chewing thoughtfully. Trust gets folks killed, but sometimes you have to trust anyway, or you're already dead in ways that matter more. They sat in silence for a time, the fire crackling, the wind howling outside. Evelyn felt exhaustion settling deep into her bones, now that the warmth and food had blunted the edge of her desperation. But the questions still burned. You said you know me from town, but I don't recall ever seeing you. That's because I'm good at not being seen when I don't want to be. He refilled her cup with more hot tea. I come down to Pine Ridge maybe 4 times a year for supplies. Stay just long enough to trade my pelts, and I'm gone. Most folks are happy to see the back of me. Why are they afraid of you? Cole's smile held no humor. Because before I came to this mountain, I was a bounty hunter. I tracked men for money, killed them when they didn't come peaceful. He said it flatly, with neither pride nor shame. Did that for near on 20 years. Got good at it. Got known for it. And then I got tired of it. Evelyn should have been terrified. A killer sitting across from her, admitting to violence as casually as another man might discuss his carpentry. But something in his weariness, in the weight he carried, spoke of regret, not menace. What made you stop? I realized I'd become the same as the men I hunted, just with a piece of paper to make it legal, he said, looking at his hands as if he could see blood on them. Bounty hunting isn't justice. It's just violence with paperwork. So I walked away. Found this mountain. I've been here 6 years now. It must be lonely. It is. But it's clean. He met her eyes. No one asks me to be something I'm not. No one depends on me to save them or kill for them. It's just me and the quiet. Until tonight. Until tonight, he agreed. Evelyn set her cup down, gathering her courage. You said Ridley was guilty of something. Do you think he stole the money? Seems likely. He has the means, the opportunity. The question is, why? Cole leaned back, thinking. Ridley isn't hurting for coin, not that anyone can see. The store does a steady business, so why risk stealing the church collection? Maybe he is hurting. Maybe he's hiding debts. Maybe. Cole didn't sound convinced. Or maybe the money wasn't the point. What do you mean? Think about it. $300 is a fair sum, but it's not a fortune. Not worth the risk for a man in Ridley's position. But framing you for it. He gestured toward her. That serves another purpose. It gets rid of someone, discredits them, makes them run. The idea landed on Evelyn like a bucket of ice water. You think he wanted me gone? I think it's possible. The man was showing an interest in you. The whole town knew it. You turned him down. Some men don't take rejection well. Cole's voice turned hard. And some men see women as property to be acquired or destroyed. Evelyn thought of Ridley's persistent attention, the way his smiles grew strained when she refused his invitations, the petty snubs that followed. She thought of seeing him with those rough men in the alley, the flash of anger when he'd realized she was watching. I saw him, she said slowly. 3 weeks ago, late at night, behind his store. He was with men I didn't recognize. They were exchanging money. Cole's attention sharpened. What kind of men? Hard men. Worn clothes, road dust on them. They looked like drifters, but they carried themselves like soldiers or gunslingers. She pulled her shawl tighter. When Ridley saw me, he looked angry, just for a moment, before he hid it. Did you tell anyone? No, it seemed like his business, not mine. I just hurried home. She felt foolish now. Do you think, is that why he framed me? Because I saw something I shouldn't have? Could be. Or it could be he was planning on framing you anyway, and you seeing him just moved up his timetable. Cole stood and went to the window, peering out at the storm. Either way, you're caught in something bigger than a simple theft charge. Fear curdled in Evelyn's stomach. What do you mean? Cole turned to her, his expression grim. If Ridley is dealing with the kind of men you described, and if he's willing to destroy your life to cover his tracks, then whatever he's into is serious. Serious enough to kill for. Kill? The word came out as a whisper. Why do you think he'd be satisfied with you just leaving town? If you saw something that threatens him, he can't risk you coming back and talking. He can't risk you making it to the next settlement and filing a claim with the territorial marshal. Cole's voice was gentle, but firm. Miss Grace, I don't think they expected you to survive out here. I think they were counting on the mountain to do their work for them. The full horror of her situation crashed down on Evelyn. She had been so focused on the injustice of the accusation, she hadn't considered the deeper danger. She had thought them cruel, but not murderous. Now, looking at Cole's serious face, and she understood how naive she had been. So what do I do? She hated how small her voice sounded. Cole came back to the fire. He crouched down to meet her eye. First, you survive. This storm will last another day or two. We stay here. We stay warm. We save our strength. Then, when it breaks, we figure out how to prove your innocence and expose what Ridley is hiding. She searched his face. Why would you help me with that? You said you left that life behind. I did. But I also said I know what it's like to be judged unfairly, and I know what it's like to be guilty. He stood and went back to his pack. Maybe helping you settles some debt I owe the universe. Maybe I'm just tired of seeing innocent people suffer when I have the means to help. He pulled out a bedroll. Or maybe I'm just getting old and sentimental. Take your pick. Evelyn felt tears well in her eyes for the first time since she'd fled town. This time they weren't from despair, but from gratitude. Someone believed her. Someone with the skill and strength to actually do something about it. Thank you, she whispered. Cole laid out his bedroll on the far side of the cabin, giving her space and privacy. Don't thank me yet. We have a long road ahead, and it's going to be dangerous. Ridley won't give up easy, and whoever he's working with is likely worse. I don't care. And she realized she meant it. I did nothing wrong. I won't spend the rest of my life a fugitive for a crime I didn't commit. Good. Cole settled into his bedroll, positioned so he faced the door. Even at rest, he was alert. Get some sleep, Miss Grace. Real sleep. Not that half-lidded listening you've been doing. I'll keep watch. Evelyn lay down on the bench, curled in her shawl and the old blanket, feeling the warmth of a well-made fire for the first time in days. Despite the danger, the uncertainty, and the fear, she felt something she hadn't felt since the accusations began. Hope. Outside, the storm still raged, but inside the cabin, for the first time in a long, long while, Evelyn Grace was not alone. Cole left at first light, moving through the snow-laden forest with the silent efficiency of a man who had spent years hunting prey. Evelyn watched from the window until he disappeared among the pines. Then she turned to the empty cabin, a sudden, sharp vulnerability washing over her despite the fire and stored provisions. She tried to busy herself with small tasks, rearranging her few belongings, making notes in the margins of her teaching Bible, practicing the survival skills Cole had shown her. But her mind kept drifting to the worst scenarios. What if someone recognized Cole and connected him to her? What if Ridley had men watching the trails? What if Cole simply decided helping her was too dangerous and didn't come back? She dismissed that last thought immediately. Whatever else he was, Cole was not a man who broke his word. The hours crawled by. She rationed the firewood as he'd taught her, and kept watch at the window, though she saw nothing but snow and trees. By late afternoon, a sliver of doubt crept in despite her faith in him. What if something had happened? What if he was hurt or captured? The soft whistle from outside nearly made her weep with relief. It was the signal he'd taught her. 3 short notes, like a winter bird. She scrambled to the door and pulled it open to find Cole standing there, dusted with snow, his expression dark. "What happened?" she asked as he stepped inside and shook off the cold. "Town's quieted down. The search is off. Most folks figure you're dead by now, frozen somewhere in the mountains." He pulled off his gloves, accepting the warm cup she'd prepared. "They're planning a memorial service for you next Sunday." The thought of her own memorial made Evelyn's stomach turn. "Did you find out anything useful?" "A few things. I played the part of a trapper, down for supplies. Folks are wary of me, but they talk around me, especially after a few drinks at the saloon." He warmed his hands on the cup. "Thomas Ridley has been busy. He's building an addition onto his store. New stock coming in regular. He seems to have done well for himself, off that church collection. I thought as much, but $300 doesn't explain what I saw." Cole set his cup down and pulled a small notebook from his pocket, something he'd clearly bought in town. He had made sketches and notes. "The building materials he's bringing in are worth thousands of dollars. The inventory, too. Either he robbed a bank we don't know about, or there's something else going on." Evelyn studied his notes. "Those men I saw him with, do you think they're connected?" "It's what I'm banking on." "I made some careful inquiries at the saloon," Cole began, turning a page in his notebook. "Pretended I was curious if Ridley was expanding, what with Pine Ridge growing and all. The bartender mentioned he'd seen some suspicious types coming and going from Ridley's store at odd hours. He figured they were just customers, but he seemed uneasy about them." "Did anyone mention me?" Cole's expression softened. "Widow Hayes did. Someone made a cruel joke at your expense, and she spoke up. Said you were a good teacher and deserved the benefit of the doubt, even if you'd made a mistake." He paused. "Sheriff Dalton was there too. Said the whole situation troubled him, but without any proof, his hands were tied by what the town decided." Evelyn finished the thought with a bitter edge. "Sheriff Dalton always did bend to popular opinion." "Perhaps," Cole mused, "or perhaps he's more careful than he lets on. As I was leaving, he followed me outside. Asked if I'd seen any sign of you up in the mountains." Cole met her eyes. "I said no, of course, but he looked relieved, almost as if he was hoping I was lying." "Do you think he might help us?" "I think he's a man in doubt. He wants to do the right thing, but doesn't know how. That makes him either a potential ally or a liability." Cole pulled a second item from his coat, a folded newspaper. "Found this too, the Helena Territorial News." He unfolded it and pointed to a small article. Evelyn leaned in to read. The headline announced, Federal Marshals investigate missing Confederate gold. She held her breath. Confederate gold? Read it. The article explained that federal authorities were searching for a lost cache of Confederate gold coin, which had vanished near the end of the war, almost 25 years prior. Recent intelligence suggested the gold had resurfaced in Montana Territory. Marshals were investigating several towns, following leads on unusual spending patterns and gold coins appearing in circulation. Those men I saw with Ridley, Evelyn said slowly. You don't think... I think Ridley's involved in something a whole lot bigger than the church collection box, Call said, his face grim. I think he stole that money and framed you to get you out of the way, either because you saw something that night, or because he was afraid of what you might see. But I didn't see anything. Just him talking to those men. I didn't even think it was important. It doesn't matter what you actually saw. It only matters what he thinks you saw, or what you might figure out. Call stood and began to pace the small cabin. If Ridley is part of a ring dealing in stolen Confederate gold, he can't afford witnesses. He can't afford questions. You were a threat just by being observant and having the trust of the community. The sheer scale of it washed over Evelyn. She had thought herself the victim of a petty grudge, of Ridley's wounded pride. But this was real danger, the kind that left people dead in unmarked graves. What do we do? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. We need proof, hard proof that links Ridley to that gold. Call stopped pacing and looked at her. Which means we need to get inside his store. Break in. You mean, search the whole place? That's incredibly dangerous. It is, he agreed. But it's the only way to prove your innocence and expose him. He knelt in front of her and took her hands in his. I won't lie to you, Evelyn. This is more dangerous than I knew when I agreed to help. If Ridley's working with the kind of men who deal in stolen war gold, they won't hesitate to kill to protect their secret. Evelyn looked down at their joined hands. His, scarred and weathered. Hers, soft and stained with ink from years of teaching. I'm tired of running, she said, her voice finding its strength. I'm tired of hiding. If the truth is in that store, then we're going to find it. And that might mean confronting Ridley directly. It might mean putting yourself within his reach. Then that's what we'll do. She squeezed his hands. I trust you, Call. You'll keep me safe. Something shifted in his expression, a vulnerability mingling with his resolve. I'll die before I let him hurt you. He corrected himself. We'll make sure neither of us dies. She managed a small, wry smile. I have students to get back to, and you have many more carvings to make. That brought a hint of warmth to his eyes. Deal. They spent the evening planning in earnest. Call sketched the layout of Pine Ridge from memory. The location of the store, the alleys, the sightlines, where the sheriff's office stood in relation to it all. They discussed timing, supplies, how to approach without being seen. We'll go in 3 nights, Call decided. New moon, darkest night. I'll scout the approaches tomorrow. Watch Ridley's habits. Then we move. It felt like too long and not nearly long enough. 3 days to prepare. If we rush this, we'll get caught or killed, he said, looking at her seriously. You need to be sure, Evelyn. Once we start this, there's no turning back. We either succeed and clear your name, or we fail and likely die trying. She thought of her students, of Mary Hutchins, who wanted to be a teacher, of little Emma Ridley, whose father was a criminal, of the life she had built and lost. She thought of her mother's promise at the pub, the legacy she wanted to leave. "I'm sure," she said firmly. Call nodded, a clear respect in his eyes. "Then we begin tomorrow. I'm going to teach you everything I know about moving unseen, about sensing danger, about surviving when things go wrong." He stood, offering a hand to help her up. "By the time we walk into that town, you'll be ready." Evelyn took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They stood close in the firelight, and she saw her own determination reflected in his face. "Thank you," she said softly, "for believing me, for taking this risk. Thank you for giving me a reason to fight." He didn't let go of her hand. "It's been a long time since I felt like I mattered to something good." "You matter," Evelyn said, and she meant it with all her heart. They stood there as the fire crackled and the night deepened outside. Two unlikely allies, bound by a common goal and something deeper that neither dared to name. 3 days until they risked everything. 3 days to prepare for redemption or ruin. Evelyn had never been so frightened or so ready. The next 2 days passed in a blur of intense preparation. Call transformed from the quiet mountain man into the skilled scout and tracker he had once been, teaching Evelyn with patience and precision. "Walk on the balls of your feet," he instructed as they practiced moving through the snow. "Feel for the twigs before you put your weight down. Sound travels in the cold air. Every snap and crack announces you." Evelyn followed his lead, trying to mimic his near-silent movements. At first, she felt clumsy, painfully loud despite her efforts. But gradually, as her body learned the rhythm, she improved. Call's rare smile when she successfully crossed a patch of frozen ground, without a sound, was more rewarding than any teaching award she had ever received. He taught her how to read the forest, how to distinguish which shadows were safe and which sounds meant danger, how to use the terrain for cover. "You're not trying to be invisible," he explained. "You're trying to be uninteresting, part of the landscape, something the eye slides over without registering as a threat." In the evenings, he showed her defensive techniques. "I'm not teaching you to fight," he said firmly. "Fighting means you've already been caught. I'm teaching you how to break a hold, how to buy yourself a few seconds to run." He positioned her hands, showed her where to strike if she was grabbed. Eyes, throat, knees. The lesson felt disturbingly practical. This was no longer a theoretical danger. This was preparation for real violence. "Strike hard, don't hesitate, and then run as fast as you can," Call instructed. "Your goal isn't to win, it's to survive long enough to escape." On the second evening, as they rested from their training, Evelyn noticed Call cleaning a small pistol she hadn't seen before. "I want you to take this," he said, holding it out. She drew back slightly. "I don't know how to shoot." "Then I'll teach you. Tomorrow at dawn, we'll go far enough from the cabin that the sound won't carry." His expression was grave. "I hope you never have to use it. But hope is not a strategy." That night, Evelyn lay awake long after Call's breathing had settled into the rhythm of sleep. She thought of the woman she had been just a few weeks ago, a schoolteacher who had never imagined holding a gun, who believed in justice and community and the inherent goodness of people. That woman felt like a stranger now, but she didn't feel lost. She felt changed, tempered, like steel in a fire. The morning brought the shooting lesson. Call led her to a clearing well away from the cabin and set up targets against a snow-covered bank. The pistol felt heavy and alien in her hand. It's a tool, Call said from behind her, guiding her stance. Nothing more. You don't have to like it. You just have to know how to use it, if your life depends on it. His hands positioned hers, thumbs together, arms extended but not locked, weight forward. His body was warm behind her, solid and reassuring, despite the grim nature of the lesson. Breathe out. Squeeze gently, he murmured near her ear. Don't flinch. Just a smooth press until the gun surprises you. The first shot was a deafening crack, the recoil jarring her arms. It went wide of the target. Good, Call said. Again. They practiced until her arms ached and her ears rang, despite the cloth he'd had her use to muffle the sound. By the end, she could hit the target more often than not. She would never be a sharpshooter, but she could defend herself if she had to. That's all I needed to see, Call said, helping her clean and reload the weapon. You don't freeze. That's more important than accuracy. Plenty of people practice shooting, but they never consider what it means to aim a gun at another person. You handled it. I don't feel like I handled it. I feel sick. Good. That means you're not a killer. You're just someone prepared to survive. He squeezed her shoulder gently. There's a difference. Don't you forget it. That afternoon, their last before the mission, they went over the plan one final time. Call had sketched detailed maps of the town, marking routes and alternates, identifying places to hide if things went wrong. I go in first, he said, his finger tracing the lines. Make sure the way is clear. You follow at a distance. Stay in the shadows. We meet in the alley behind Ridley's store. Here. I'll pick the back door lock. Should take less than a minute if it's a standard pin and tumbler. If anyone sees us, at any point, we abort. We run in different directions. We meet back at the cabin. His finger traced escape routes. Your safety is more important than the mission. Our safety, Evelyn corrected. I'm not losing you over this. Call looked up, and something warm flashed in his eyes. Our safety, he agreed. They sat in a comfortable silence for a time, the maps between them, the fire crackling. She found herself memorizing his face, the scar, the weathered lines, the gray at his temples. When had he become so dear to her? She started to speak, the fear welling up. I can't. Don't say that, he cut in, his voice firm but gentle. We need the proof. More than that, we need you alive. He tightened his grip on her hand. I spent 6 years on this mountain, hiding from the world, convinced I had nothing left to offer anyone. Then you stumbled into my cabin, scared and half frozen. And suddenly, I remembered what it felt like to have a purpose, to matter. Evelyn's eyes stung with unshed tears. You always mattered. Maybe, but I didn't feel it until I met you. He raised his free hand, hesitated, then gently touched her face. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know. I haven't felt this way since Sarah. I didn't think it was possible. But you... She closed the distance between them, kissing him before fear or doubt could stop her. For a moment, he froze in surprise. Then his arms went around her, and he returned the kiss with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they broke apart, both breathless, Call rested his forehead against hers. We're going to survive this, he said with fierce determination. Both of us. We're going to clear your name, and then we're going to figure out what this is between us. I promise you. I'm going to hold you to that promise, Evelyn whispered. They held each other as the afternoon light faded, drawing courage from their closeness, strength from their shared purpose. The next day would bring danger and uncertainty, but tonight they had this connection, this hope, this fragile promise of a future worth fighting for. When complete darkness fell, they readied their gear for the mission. Every movement was careful, deliberate. Cole checked his tools, his weapons. Evelyn dressed in dark clothes, borrowed from his pack, and tucked her mother's locket beneath her shirt, where it could neither reflect the light nor make a sound. "Get some rest," Cole said at last. "We leave 2 hours after sunset tomorrow. That gives us time to reach the town and get into position before the deepest part of the night." But neither of them slept well. Evelyn lay awake, listening to Cole's restless movements, knowing he was as tense as she was. They were two souls on the precipice of either redemption or disaster, clinging to hope with both hands. Tomorrow, everything would change. The night was cold and moonless, perfect for their purpose. Evelyn followed Cole through the darkness, her steps careful and deliberate, just as he had taught her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady. The pistol pressed against her side beneath her coat, a weight she had grown accustomed to over the past few days. Pine Ridge emerged slowly through the trees, a scattering of lights in windows and smoke curling from chimneys. Most honest folk were already in their beds. Cole raised a hand, signaling her to stop. They crouched at the tree line, watching and listening. "The sheriff's office is dark," Cole murmured, his voice nearly inaudible. "The saloon has a few stragglers, but they'll be drunk and focused on themselves. Ridley's Emporium is over there. See it? A single lamp in the back window." Evelyn saw the faint glow of what must be Ridley's office. Is he still in there? Or did he just leave the lamp burning? We wait. Give it 30 minutes. If the light stays on and we see no movement, we go. They waited in the cold silence, watching. Evelyn's legs began to cramp from crouching, but she didn't move. This was the hardest part of all of Cole's training. The patience to remain still when every instinct screamed to move. Finally, Cole touched her shoulder. "All right. Remember, I go in first. You follow after a count of 10. Stick to the shadows. If anything feels wrong, you run. Don't wait for me." "I'm not leaving you," she said, her voice firm. "We go together, or not at all." She met his gaze, saw the frustration warring with reluctant admiration. "Stubborn woman," he muttered, but there was an affection in it. "Fine, but you follow my lead." "Exactly. Understood?" "Understood." They moved like ghosts along the edge of town. Evelyn's training served her well. She mirrored Cole's path, used the same shadows, made almost no sound. The alley behind Ridley's Emporium was narrow and dark, cluttered with crates and refuse. A perfect hiding spot. Cole examined the lock on the back door by touch, pulling tools from his pocket. Evelyn stood watch, her eyes scanning the darkness for any movement. Her breath came in small white clouds, despite her efforts to remain calm. Metal scraped softly against metal. Once, twice, then a quiet click. "We're in," Cole whispered. "Stay close." The back room of the shop was cramped and cluttered. Supplies, stock, the commercial detritus of a frontier merchant. Cole moved with confidence, heading toward the office where they'd seen the lamp. Evelyn followed, every nerve on high alert. The office door was unlocked. Inside, a desk was piled with papers, Ledgers lined the shelves, and a small safe sat in the corner. Cole went straight for the safe. "This is new," he murmured. "Fancy. Doesn't match the rest of his operation." While he worked on the safe, Evelyn scanned the desk. Most of the papers were mundane. Orders, invoices, letters from suppliers. But then she found something odd. A letter on fine paper, penned in an educated hand. She held it to the lamplight. "Cole," she whispered, a new urgency in her voice. "Look at this." He moved to her side and read over her shoulder. The letter referred to a shipment, a price agreed upon, and mentioned a meeting at the usual spot on the 15th. It was signed only with the initials JB, no names, but it was damningly suspicious. "Pocket it," Cole said. "Keep looking." Evelyn searched the desk drawers while Cole returned to the safe. In the bottom drawer, tucked beneath a false bottom, she found something that made her gasp. The church's ornate iron collection box. Empty, but unmistakable. "Cole, I have it." "Good. That proves he took it." The safe gave a soft thud. "Now let's see what he's protecting." He pulled the safe door open. Inside were several canvas sacks. Cole pulled one out, loosened the drawstring, and tipped it toward the lamplight. Gold coins tumbled into his palm, but this wasn't ordinary gold. These were different. Old Confederate mints. "My God," Evelyn breathed. Cole's expression was grim. "It's real. The gold from that newspaper article. Ridley has it." "How much?" He quickly checked the other bags. "Thousands of dollars worth. Maybe more." He paused, holding one of the coins to the light. "This isn't all of the missing gold. It can't be. But it's enough to hang him." A floorboard creaked in the outer room. They froze. Cole's hand went to his pistol. Evelyn held her breath. The door burst open. Thomas Ridley stood there, a shotgun leveled at them. Two rough-looking men stood behind him, their own guns drawn. His face was flushed with anger and triumph. "I knew it," Ridley snarled. "I knew you weren't dead, you meddling witch. I should have guessed you'd find help." Cole moved slightly, putting himself between Evelyn and the guns. "Looks like we found your secret, Ridley. Confederate gold. That's a federal crime, a hanging offense. Only if someone lives to tell about it." Ridley's smile was ugly. "You two broke into my store. I have every right to shoot you as thieves. In fact, that's exactly what happened, isn't it, boys?" The two men grinned. One of them looked familiar. Evelyn realized with a jolt of shock that she'd seen him before. One of the men in the alley that night. "You framed me," Evelyn said, her voice trembling with rage. "You destroyed my life. Why?" "Because I saw you with those men. Because you were a liability," Ridley shot back. "You saw me that night. And even if you didn't understand what you saw, you might eventually ask questions. You might mention it to someone. I couldn't take that risk. So you stole from your own church and blamed me. $300 well spent, I'd say. Got rid of you and gave myself cover to move inventory without anyone looking too closely at my books." He gestured with the shotgun. "Now carefully, Anders. Put your weapons on the desk. Both of you. Slow and easy." Cole complied, his face a mask. Evelyn placed her pistol on the desk with shaking hands. "You won't get away with this," she said. Cole added, "The Federals are already looking into that newspaper article. They're closing in on this gold ring. They'll find whatever we leave for them." One of the thugs, a man with a scar across his nose and dull eyes, sneered. We've been ahead of them for 2 years. We'll stay ahead of them now. That gold isn't yours, Evelyn said, grasping for any argument that might reach them. It belongs to a dead government, Ridley cut in. The Confederacy is finished. That gold was just sitting in some forgotten cache, doing no one any good. We're redistributing it. A public service, really. Through murder and theft and ruining innocent lives. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. You're monsters. We're businessmen, Ridley corrected. And you are loose ends. Wilson, Crane, tie them up. We'll take them up into the mountains. Make it look like they froze to death. 2 people who got lost trying to rob me, fled into the wilderness, and perished. So tragic. The 2 men moved forward. Cole tensed, and Evelyn knew he was calculating the odds, looking for any opening. But 3 guns against 2 unarmed people. The math was brutal. Then, from outside, a voice called, "Ridley, you in there? Saw your lamp was on late." It was Sheriff Dalton. Ridley's face went from white to red. "Don't say a word," he hissed at Cole and Evelyn. To his men, he said, "Hide them, now!" Wilson grabbed Evelyn, clamping a hand over her mouth and dragging her toward a supply closet. Crane moved on Cole, but Cole was faster. He threw himself backward, shoving them both into a set of shelves. Ledgers and books rained down, making a tremendous crash. "In here, Sheriff," Cole shouted. "Ridley's got the gold. He's with Crane's gang." Ridley's fist caught Cole on the jaw, snapping his head back, but the damage was done. They heard running footsteps. The back door splintered open. "Drop your weapons," Dalton yelled. "By the authority of the Montana Territory, drop them now." Ridley swung his shotgun toward the door just as Dalton burst in, pistol drawn. Time seemed to slow. Evelyn saw Ridley's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Dalton's expression shift from authority to alarm. She didn't think. She snatched a heavy ledger from the fallen pile and threw it with all her might at Ridley's head. It caught him on the temple. His shot went wild, blasting a hole in the ceiling. Dalton's answering shot was not wild. A single, controlled crack that tore through Ridley's shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to the floor. Wilson let go of Evelyn, his hands shooting toward the sky. "Don't shoot! We give up!" Crane, seeing his options had vanished, did the same. "It wasn't our idea. Ridley's the boss." Dalton kept his gun trained on them, his expression grim. "On the floor. All of you, face down, hands where I can see them." They obeyed. Dalton moved in carefully, kicked the weapons away, then looked at Cole and Evelyn. "You 2 all right?" "We're fine," Cole said, helping Evelyn to her feet. "Sheriff, look in the safe. Confederate gold. Ridley's been hiding it, moving it. He's part of that ring you've been hearing about." Dalton looked, saw the gold coins, and his face hardened. "I'll be damned. I came over because I saw movement. Thought maybe it was vandals. Instead, I find—" He looked at Evelyn. "Miss Grace, most of the town thinks you're dead." "Most of the town thought I was a thief," Evelyn said, her voice returning. "But I'm neither. Ridley framed me because I saw him with these men. The church money is here too. The collection box is in the desk drawer." Dalton checked. Found it. His face was a mixture of conflict, relief, and shame. "I should have believed you. Should have looked deeper." "You're here now," Evelyn told him. "That's what matters." More footsteps sounded outside. Townspeople drawn by the gunshot. Dalton called for help, for rope, for someone to fetch the town doctor for Ridley's wound. As people crowded in, seeing the gold, seeing the empty collection box, seeing Evelyn alive, the truth began to dawn. The widow Hayes pushed through the crowd, saw Evelyn, and burst into tears. "Oh, my dear girl, we thought, we all thought." The scene became a controlled chaos as Dalton secured Ridley and his men, while the townspeople gaped at the gold and finally understood what had truly happened. Through it all, Cole stayed close to Evelyn, a hand on her shoulder, steady and protective. She had been right to trust him. Together, they had found the truth. Now came the reckoning. The cells in the sheriff's office were full, but Dalton insisted on keeping Ridley and his two men under his direct watch until federal marshals could arrive. A wire had been sent to Helena immediately. The capture of Ridley and the discovery of Confederate gold was bigger than territorial law could handle alone. Evelyn sat in Dalton's office, wrapped in a blanket someone had brought, still trembling from the confrontation. Cole stood by the window, watching the street where curious townspeople still gathered despite the late hour. The gold sat on Dalton's desk, gleaming in the lamplight, evidence of crimes that stretched back decades. "Miss Grace," Dalton said softly, sitting across from her, "I owe you an apology. We all do. We let fear and assumption guide us, instead of evidence and justice." "You believed what seemed true," Evelyn said, though the words tasted like ash. "Thomas Ridley was a respected man. I was just a woman on her own, easy to doubt." "That's no excuse," Dalton said, his jaw tight. "I swore an oath to uphold justice, not popular opinion. I failed you. I'll carry that." Cole turned from the window. What matters now is what happens next. Ridley's in custody, but he's not the head of this operation. The men with him, Wilson and Crane, they're just hired muscle. Someone else organized this entire network. "The letter," Evelyn said, the memory surfacing. She pulled the paper from her pocket and handed it to Dalton. "We found this on his desk. It mentions shipments and prices." Signed J.B. Dalton studied it, his brow furrowed. "J.B.? I know those initials. James Blackwood. He's a railroad executive based in Helena. A wealthy, influential man. Sits on the territorial council. A man in that position could move goods easily," Cole said. "Railroad authority means avoiding scrutiny. It's the perfect cover for moving stolen gold, but we can't prove it with this letter alone." Dalton said, "It's suggestive but not conclusive. A good lawyer would tear it apart." "Then we need more." Cole's voice was hard. "We need Ridley or his men to talk. Testify against Blackwood." "They won't," Dalton said grimly. "Men like that fear their boss more than the gallows. And without solid testimony, Blackwood remains untouchable." Evelyn stood and began to pace the small office, her mind working the problem as if planning a difficult lesson. What if we could prove the gold moved on Blackwood's railroad? Records, shipping manifests, something that ties him to it directly. Those records would be in Helena, likely in Blackwood's own office. Dalton shook his head. "Even with what we have, getting a warrant for a member of the Territorial Council would take weeks. And that's assuming we could convince a judge without Blackwood getting wind of it and destroying the evidence. He'd slip away." Evelyn clenched her fists. "He orchestrates this whole operation, ruins lives, and faces no consequences because he's rich and connected." "Not if we're smart." All eyes turned to Cole. He was staring at the gold with a thoughtful expression. "Blackwood doesn't know we've captured Ridley yet. News doesn't travel that fast, especially at night. Right now, he thinks everything is secure." "What are you suggesting?" Dalton asked. Ridley was supposed to transport this gold soon. The letter mentions the 15th, which is 3 days from now. Blackwood is expecting a shipment. Cole looked at Dalton. What if we give him one? Evelyn realized what he meant. We use the gold as bait. We send it to Blackwood as if everything is normal, but we follow it. We catch him receiving stolen Confederate gold. It's a trap, Dalton said, but he didn't sound opposed, just cautious. It's justice, Cole corrected. He walked to the desk, examining the gold. We send the shipment, but we make sure the Federals are there to witness the delivery. We catch Blackwood red-handed with gold he can't explain. Dalton was silent for a long moment, weighing the options. It's risky. If Blackwood suspects a thing, he'll vanish. Men with his resources can disappear like smoke. But if we do nothing, he'll disappear anyway, just more slowly. Cole looked the sheriff in the eye. We have one shot here. It might be the only one we get. I'll need to coordinate with the Federals. They'd have to agree to the plan. Get men in place in Helena without alerting Blackwood. Dalton took a piece of paper and began to write. I'll send a priority telegram first thing in the morning. See if Marshal Crawford is willing to work with us. While we wait, Evelyn said, we need to keep Ridley's arrest quiet. If word gets back to Helena through normal channels, Blackwood could find out. I'll talk to my people, Dalton agreed. Tell them it's a sensitive federal matter. Ask for discretion. Most will cooperate once they understand. Cole gave a slow nod, but something in his expression troubled Evelyn. After Dalton left to arrange the telegram, she approached him. What is it? She asked quietly. What aren't you saying? Cole was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. If we do this, if we go to Helena and confront Blackwood, we're putting ourselves within his reach. A man that powerful and ruthless won't hesitate to eliminate threats. So we don't go to Helena. We let the marshals handle it, Evelyn. He turned to her. Blackwood knows about you. Ridley must have told him about the schoolteacher who saw things she shouldn't have. Even if we catch him, even if he goes to prison, he has resources. People loyal to him or paid by him. You won't be safe as long as he's free to give orders. The reality of it fell on her like cold water. She had thought arresting Ridley would end this, allow her to return to her life. But the danger was deeper. The roots of this conspiracy reached far beyond Pine Ridge. So what do we do? She asked. We end it for good. Cole's hand found hers. We go to Helena. We make sure Blackwood is taken down and stays down. Not just arrested, but convicted with evidence so solid he can't buy or threaten his way out. It's dangerous, but it's the only way you'll ever be truly safe. His thumb traced gently over her knuckles. I won't lie to you. This last part might be the most dangerous of all, but I'll be with you every step of the way. I promise you that. Evelyn looked down at their joined hands, thinking how much had changed since the night he'd stumbled into that cabin. She had been on the run, convinced her life was over. Now, she was ready to face the man responsible for her suffering. I'm tired of being afraid, she said softly. Tired of letting powerful men dictate my life. If we're going to do this, let's do it right. Pride and worry vied for space in Cole's expression. You're the bravest person I've ever met. I learned from a good teacher. He pulled her close, the warmth and safety of his arms enfolding her. When this is over, when you're truly safe and your name is cleared, I want to talk about the future. Our future. Evelyn's heart swelled, overriding the fear. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. They stood together as the dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Outside, Pine Ridge was coming to life, the town waking to news that would shake it to its foundations. Inside, two people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances held on to hope and to each other. Over the next 2 days, the plans took shape. Marshal Crawford answered Dalton's telegram with cautious approval. He would be in Helena with a team ready to arrest Blackwood when the gold shipment arrived. But he needed someone who could identify Ridley's associates, someone who had witnessed the operation firsthand. He needed Cole and Evelyn in Helena. It's not ideal, Dalton admitted as they reviewed the plan. Safer for you to stay here, but Crawford's right. Your testimony about what you saw that night, what you found in Ridley's store, it's crucial to building an airtight case. We'll go, Cole said before Evelyn could reply. He looked to her for confirmation. She nodded. We'll go, but we'll go armed and careful. No unnecessary risks. I'll send 2 of my deputies with you, Dalton said. Good men. They'll help keep you safe on the journey. The night before they were set to leave, Evelyn visited the schoolhouse. It was empty and dark, her desk layered with a fine coat of dust. Someone had left flowers there, now withered, but the gesture touched her deeply. A child's handwritten note read, "We miss you, Miss Grace. Please come back." Cole found her there, standing among the ghosts of her former life. You'll teach again, he said gently. This will all be behind you. Will it? She touched her desk, the blackboard, the textbooks lined on the shelf. Even when Blackwood is arrested, when everyone knows the truth, will they ever really forget they believed I was a thief? Will the parents trust me with their children? The ones worth knowing will, he said, moving closer. And if they don't, then we'll find a place that deserves you. There are other towns, other schools. You could teach anywhere, Evelyn. We, she repeated, catching the word. You said, we'll find a place. Cole's hand found hers in the darkness. If you'll have me. I know I'm not much, just an old bounty hunter trying to set things right. But I meant what I said. I want a future with you. Teaching, traveling, building something new. I don't care what it is, as long as it's together. Evelyn turned to face him. She saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the hope he tried not to show too much, in case she refused. This hard man, this killer who had found redemption, offering her his heart. I'll have you, she said, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. However you come, whatever you've been, I will have you, Cole Anders. He kissed her then, a kiss that was deep and possessive, both a promise and a prayer. When they broke apart, they were both breathless, and neither was afraid anymore. Whatever happened in Helena, whatever dangers awaited them, they would face them together. Tomorrow, Cole said, we ride for Helena. Tomorrow, we end this, Evelyn agreed. We end this, and we start our lives. They left the schoolhouse hand in hand, walking out into the night toward an uncertain future. But for the first time since the accusations began, Evelyn felt truly free. Not because her name was cleared, that would come, but because she had found something worth fighting for beyond justice. She had found a home in another person, and that was worth any risk. Helena sprawled across the valley like a promise of civilization in the middle of the wilderness. 10 times the size of Pine Ridge, it boasted brick buildings, paved streets, and the kind of commerce only a territorial capital could command. The rail yard dominated the eastern edge, a monument to progress and the wealth it carried. Evelyn watched it all from the window of the boarding house where Marshall Crawford had secured them rooms. She had put on her one good dress and borrowed a proper coat from the widow Race before leaving Pine Ridge. She needed to look respectable, like a schoolteacher, not a fugitive. Appearances mattered when dealing with powerful men. Cole stood behind her, also cleaned up, his beard trimmed and his hair tied back. He wore a dark suit that made him look less like a mountain man and more like what he had once been, a dangerous and skilled hunter. The transformation was a little unsettling. This was the man who had tracked criminals across the territories, who killed without hesitation when the law demanded it. "You're thinking loud again," he said softly, "just remembering who you were." "I'm still that man when I have to be." His hand rested on her shoulder. "That's what it means to survive. To be what the moment requires. Right now, the moment requires someone who can face down Blackwood without flinching." A knock on the door announced Marshall Crawford. He was a lean man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes, carrying himself with the posture of someone who had seen too much to be easily fooled. "The shipment arrived an hour ago," he said without preamble. "Blackwood's at the rail yard office now, personally overseeing the unloading. My men are positioned around the building. He's not getting away. But I need you two to come with me. Your identification of the gold, your testimony that you found it in Ridley's possession. That's what makes this arrest stick." "And Blackwood?" Cole asked. "He doesn't know we're coming?" "He thinks it's a routine customs inspection. One of my men played the part of Ridley's courier, delivered the shipment as expected. Blackwood has no idea we're onto him." Crawford checked his pocket watch. "We move in 15 minutes. I need you ready." When he'd gone, Evelyn took a deep, steadying breath. This was it. The moment that would either end the nightmare or prolong it indefinitely. Cole handed her the small pistol she had learned to use. "Just in case, Palmaus," he said. "I hope you don't need it. But hope's not a strategy." "I know," Evelyn finished. "I learned from a very thorough teacher." They shared a brief smile, finding courage in each other's eyes. Then they followed Crawford out to the street where deputies waited with horses. The rail yard office was a sturdy brick building with barred windows and heavy doors, built to keep valuables secure. Crawford's men had surrounded it discreetly, positioned in alleys and doorways, watching every exit. To the casual observer, nothing seemed out of place, but Cole could see the net closing. "You two stay behind me," Crawford instructed. "When we go in, I'll do the talking. Anders, I know your instincts, but this has to be done by the book. No improvising unless things go south. Understood?" "Understood," Cole said, though his hand rested near the pistol hidden in his coat. They entered through the main door. The front office was empty, save for a nervous-looking clerk who jumped when Crawford flashed his badge. "Federal Marshal, where's Blackwood?" "In the back office, sir, with the shipment. But he gave orders not to be disturbed." "He's about to be disturbed." Crawford moved past the clerk, Cole and Evelyn right behind him, with two deputies bringing up the rear. The door to the back office was ajar. Through it, Evelyn could see James Blackwood, a well-dressed man in his 60s, with silver hair and the confident posture of the wealthy. He stood beside an open crate, utterly absorbed, a jeweler's loupe pressed to his eye as he scrutinized the gold coins nestled within. Crawford pushed the door wide. "James Blackwood!" You're under arrest for possession of stolen government property, conspiracy to traffic illegal goods, and accessory to theft and fraud. Blackwood's head snapped up, shock etched across his features before he mastered it. Marshal Crawford, what is the meaning of this? I am conducting legitimate railroad business. That crate is filled with Confederate gold, Crawford cut in, his voice like iron. Stolen at the end of the war, transported on your rail network. We have your partner, Thomas Ridley, in custody. He's been very cooperative regarding your organization. A lie. But Blackwood couldn't know that. His expression shifted. Shock gave way to cold calculation. His eyes flicked to Cole and Evelyn, and a flicker of recognition ignited. You, he said to Evelyn. You're the schoolteacher. Ridley told me you were dead. Ridley lied about many things, Evelyn said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. Including me being a thief. He stole the church funds to frame me because I saw him with your men. I saw things I was never meant to see. I don't know what you're talking about. Blackwood's voice was smooth, practiced. If Ridley committed crimes, that is his own affair. I am a legitimate businessman who happened to be personally inspecting a shipment of Confederate bullion. Cole's voice was a low growl. Gold that matches the coins we found in Ridley's safe. Gold that came through on your railroad, in shipments you authorized. Your signature is on the manifests, Blackwood. We have them. Another lie. But Blackwood's face paled almost imperceptibly. He was cornered, and he was beginning to realize it. I want my lawyer, he said. You'll get one, after we're done processing you. Crawford nodded to his deputies. Take him. As the deputies moved forward, Blackwood's hand slid toward a desk drawer. Cole saw it and moved in a blur. Don't. Blackwood froze, his eyes meeting Cole's. Whatever he saw there convinced him. His hand retreated. Smart choice, Cole said softly. I've brought in men like you before. Some come quiet, some don't. The ones who don't, well, it never ends well for them. The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. Blackwood raised his hand slowly, allowing the cuffs to be snapped onto his wrists. But his cold, calculating eyes promised this was far from over. The U.S. Marshal's office in Helena was more secure than any frontier jail. Blackwood sat in an interrogation room, his expensive suit looking out of place against the rough-hewn timber walls. Crawford had separated him from his lawyer for the time being, using legal technicalities to buy time for the interview. Evelyn watched through a small window in the door as Crawford laid out the evidence. The gold, the manifests they'd actually found in Blackwood's rail office, real, not a bluff, Ridley's letter, and the testimony of Wilson and Crane, who had folded the moment they realized how thoroughly they'd been caught. You ran an impressive operation, Crawford was saying, moving Confederate gold in legitimate rail shipments, using merchants like Ridley as distribution points. Very clever. How long did you think you could keep it up? Blackwood said nothing. His face was a mask of stone. The trouble with conspiracies, Crawford went on, is they require trust, and trust breaks when men are facing the gallows. Your men are talking, Blackwood. Every last one of them, trying to save his own neck by offering up yours. Still nothing. But Evelyn saw a muscle jump in Blackwood's jaw. Cole stood beside her, watching with the patience of a predator. He won't break, he said quietly. Men like him are used to buying their way out of trouble or pulling strings. He's waiting for a rescue. Will it come? Evelyn asked. Not this time. Crawford has him dead to rights. The evidence is overwhelming. Cole's hand found hers. It's over, Evelyn. It's really over. Blackwood is going to prison. Ridley will hang. And you are free. The words should have brought relief. Instead, Evelyn felt a strange emptiness. For weeks, her entire being had been focused on this moment, on proving her innocence, on seeing justice done. Now that it was here, she didn't know what to feel. Crawford emerged from the interrogation room, looking satisfied. He's not talking, but he doesn't have to. We have enough to convict him 3 times over. The territorial prosecutors are already drawing up the indictment. It'll go to trial, but it's a formality. He's finished. And Miss Grace? Cole asked. Her name was officially cleared this morning. I sent a wire to Pine Ridge. Sheriff Dalton will make a public announcement. The charge of theft from the church has been dropped, and there will be a formal apology from the town council. Crawford looked at Evelyn with something like respect. You showed remarkable courage, Miss Grace. Most people in your position would have run and kept running. You stayed and fought. I had help. She squeezed Cole's hand. She could not have done this alone. Nevertheless, your testimony will be crucial at the trial. I'll need you to remain in Helena for a few more days to give a full deposition. After that, you're free to go wherever you please. After Crawford left to handle the paperwork, Cole and Evelyn stepped out into the Helena afternoon. The sun was bright, the air crisp but not cold. All around them, life went on. People were shopping, children were playing, the normal, humming routine of civilization. It felt surreal after weeks of fear and flight. I don't know what to do now, Evelyn admitted. I've spent so long just trying to survive, to prove the truth. Now that it's done, I feel lost. Not lost, Cole said gently. Free. There's a difference. He led her to a bench near a small park, and they sat watching the town move around them. Now you get to choose, Evelyn. Anything you want. That's what freedom is. What do you want? She asked. Cole was silent for a long moment. I want to wake up every morning without the weight of who I used to be crushing me. I want to build something instead of hunting things. And I want... He turned to her, his gaze intense. I want to do all of it with you, if you'll have me. You've asked me that before. I'm asking again. Now that you're truly free, now that you have choices, I want you to choose me, Evelyn. Not because you need protection, or because we're bound by circumstance, but because you want to. Evelyn thought of the woman she was before the accusations, alone, dedicated to her students, convinced that was enough of a life. Then she thought of the woman she had become, stronger, braver, and no longer willing to settle for half a life. I choose you, she said, her voice firm. Not just because of what we went through, but because of who you are. Because you saw me when everyone else looked away. Because you believed in me. Because I love you. Cole's eyes shone with emotion. I love you too. Since that first night in the cabin, though I didn't know it then. You saved me, Evelyn. You gave me a reason to be more than just a ghost on a mountain. He kissed her then, in the middle of the Helena afternoon, in front of God, and strangers, and anyone who cared to watch. When they parted, they were both smiling through tears. So now what? Evelyn asked. Where do we go? Anywhere you want to teach. I'm adaptable, he smiled. Though I'd prefer somewhere a little more civilized than Pine Ridge. and definitely a place that has a need for a man handy with a chisel who can build things and keep a school teacher safe. It sounds perfect. She leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. We'll find a new town. We'll start a new life. Together. Together, Cole agreed. 3 days later, after Evelyn had given her full deposition and the prosecutor assured them their presence was no longer required, they prepared to leave Helena. They weren't going back to Pine Ridge. Instead, they planned to head west, toward the coast, where new territories were opening up and schools were desperate for teachers. On the morning of their departure, a telegram arrived at their boarding house. It was from Sheriff Dalton, brief but meaningful. Town Council offers formal apology. Church funds recovered from Ridley's safe. Your position is available if you want it. Understand if you don't. You deserved better than what we gave you. Go with our blessing. Dalton. Evelyn read it twice and then folded it neatly and put it in her pocket. They want me back. Do you want to go? Cole asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. No, she said firmly, without hesitation. They didn't believe me when it mattered. I won't forget that. There are other students who need teachers, other towns that will appreciate what I have to offer. She took his hand. New places, new beginnings. It's what we both need. Cole smiled, a look of pride and relief on his face. Then let's go find them. They boarded the westbound stagecoach that afternoon, everything they owned packed into 2 small bags. As Helena vanished behind them and the mountains opened up ahead, Evelyn felt the last tethers of her old life fall away. She was free. She was loved. And she was on her way to a future of her own choosing, one that had been worth every hardship, every moment of fear, every dark night in that cabin when she thought she wouldn't survive. She had. More than that, she had prevailed. And now, at long last, she could live. 6 months later, spring came to the small coastal town of Milliton, Oregon. The schoolhouse sat on a gentle hill overlooking the Pacific, its new white paint gleaming, its bell tower standing straight and true. Inside, Evelyn stood before the blackboard, teaching a dozen children their letters, and felt a contentment she had never known in Pine Ridge. These people had welcomed her. When she arrived with letters of recommendation from Marshall Crawford and the Territorial Education Board, they didn't ask prying questions about her past. They only cared that she was qualified and dedicated. The children adored her, and their parents respected her. This was how teaching was meant to be, built on trust and mutual regard, free from the shadow of suspicion. Through the window, she could see Cole working on the small house they had bought on the edge of town. He had taken to carpentry with the same focused intensity he had once applied to hunting. He already had a backlog of orders from neighbors who had seen his craftsmanship, furniture repairs, even intricate carvings people bought as gifts and decorations. His hands, once used for violence, now created beauty. The school day ended, and the children spilled out, chattering and laughing. Evelyn tidied her desk, wiped the slate clean, and prepared the next day's lessons. The routine brought her peace, the common rhythms of education, the satisfaction of watching young minds grow. Cole appeared at the doorway, his shirt dusted with sawdust, a smile on his weathered face. "Good day?" he asked. "A very good day," she replied. Samuel Wright has finally mastered his multiplication tables, and little Margaret read a whole page without help. She gathered her things. How is the house? Finished the porch railing. Tested it myself. It's sturdy enough to lean on through a squall. He took her bag, and they walked together down the hill toward home. Had a visitor today. A man from the next county over heard about my work. Wants me to build the furniture for his daughter's wedding. That's wonderful, Evelyn said, linking her arm through his. You're building quite the reputation. You too. I heard Mrs. Thompson telling Mrs. Davis that you're the finest teacher this town has ever had. And that's after only 6 months. They reached their house, small but sound, with Cole's careful work evident in every joint and corner. He had built a home for them, something neither of them had ever truly had before. Inside, Evelyn started dinner while Cole cleaned up from his work. The domestic rhythm still felt new enough to be precious. Over their meal, they talked about their day, about the children's progress, about the bookshelf Cole was building for the school. Simple talk, common concerns, everything Evelyn had once thought she had lost forever. Got a letter today, Cole said, as they cleared the dishes. From Sheriff Dalton. Evelyn looked up, surprised. They'd had little contact with Pine Ridge since they left. What did he say? Ridley was hanged last month. His men got prison sentences. Blackwood is still awaiting trial, but Crawford says it's just procedure. He'll either hang or spend the rest of his life in prison. Cole set the plates down and met her eyes. It's truly over, Evelyn. All of it. She absorbed the news, surprised that she felt no powerful surge of emotion. There was relief, yes, but not satisfaction. She had never wanted revenge, only justice. And now that it was done, she found she didn't need to dwell on it anymore. Good, she said simply. They can't hurt anyone else. Cole nodded, understanding. They had both moved beyond the need for retribution. Their focus now was on building, not destroying. Later that evening, they sat on their new porch, watching the sun set over the Pacific. The ocean stretched out before them, vast and beautiful. Nothing like the mountains of Montana, but just as breathtaking. He put his arm around her, and she leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. They had found their new place, their new beginning, and it was better than anything they could have imagined. Gulls cried in the sky, and the salt-tinged air carried the promise of tomorrow. I've been thinking, Cole said, his arm draped around her shoulders. About getting married. A real ceremony, not just living as we are. They had been, for all intents and purposes, married since arriving in Milatine, presenting themselves as husband and wife, but they had never made it official. Evelyn turned to look at him. She saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the flicker of doubt that still haunted him at times, wondering if she had truly chosen him, despite 6 months of proof to the contrary. I'd like that, she said softly. I would love to be your wife in every sense of the word. Relief and joy washed over his face. I don't have much to offer, just myself and what I can build with these 2 hands. That's all I need. She touched his cheek, feeling the rasp of his stubble, the weathered skin that told the story of a hard-lived life. You gave me back to myself when I had lost everything. You believed in me. You loved me. That's more than most people find in a lifetime. You did the same for me, he said, taking her hand and pressing a kiss into her palm. I was dead, in every way that mattered, up on that mountain. Then you walked into my cabin and brought me back to life. They sat in a comfortable silence as the first stars pricked the darkening sky. Somewhere in the town below, children played their last games before bedtime. Dogs barked. Someone played a violin. The ordinary, beautiful music of life went on around them. Do you ever regret leaving Pine Ridge? Cole asked. The students you had there? Evelyn considered it honestly. I regret how it ended. I regret that some of those children learned to judge before they knew the facts. But leaving? No. I found something better here. Freedom, yes, but possibility too. And you and me, Cole agreed, pulling her closer. A month later, they were married in the small church in Militine, surrounded by their new community and students who threw flower petals and laughed with joy. Evelyn wore a simple dress she'd sewn herself, and Cole wore his best suit. They exchanged vows through tears and smiles, and when they kissed, the children cheered. At the reception, as they danced to the sound of fiddles under paper lanterns, Evelyn saw her reflection in a window pane. She looked different from the frightened woman who had fled into the Montana mountains. Her face was softer now, her eyes brighter. She looked happy because she was. What are you thinking about? Cole asked, following her gaze. That we found our way home, Evelyn said. Not to a place, but to each other. The best thing I ever found, Cole said, spinning her gently. They danced as the night deepened and the stars multiplied in the sky. Two people who had survived the worst and found the best in one another. Their story began in cold and darkness and fear, but it ended here, in warmth and light and love. Sometimes the harshest winters lead to the warmest springs. Sometimes the longest nights give way to the brightest dawns. Sometimes, when you lose everything, you find what truly matters. Evelyn Grace had learned all of these lessons, and in learning them, she found not just survival, but joy. Not just escape, but belonging. Not just justice, but love. Years later, she would tell their own children the story of how their mother was falsely accused, how their father saved her, how together they found justice and each other. She would teach them about courage, truth, and the strength it takes to begin again. But on this night, her wedding night, she simply danced with her husband and felt grateful for every twist of fate that had brought them together. The cabin in the Montana mountains was empty now, slowly returning to the forest. But it had served its purpose. A refuge in the storm, a place where two broken people had found each other and begun to heal. And somewhere in the vastness of the American frontier, in a small coastal town where the ocean met the land, a school teacher and a carpenter built a life worth living together. A powerful wave of pressure seized her abdomen, stealing her breath. Marcos glanced at his watch. That's one. Let's time them. He worked methodically, transforming a corner of the cabin into a birthing area. Clean sheets on the bed, medical instruments sterilizing in boiling water, makeshift stirrups fashioned from clean rope and pillows. Every movement was efficient, with no wasted energy, no hint of panic. Sarah watched through waves of rising discomfort. You've really done this before? Twice in Afghanistan, once in South Sudan. He positioned lanterns for the best light. Not ideal conditions, but we managed. Another contraction hit her, harder than the first. Sarah breathed through it, using the techniques from her birthing classes. Marcos noted the time. 12 minutes since the last. Still early days. First babies usually take their time. He arranged pillows to support her back. Try to rest between them. Conserve your strength. As for those men outside, Marcos's expression hardened for a moment. That was a secondary concern now. This cabin stood for 40 years. It's solid construction. The entrance is defensible. The clinical assessment was oddly reassuring. Sarah nodded, then winced as another contraction began to build. 8 minutes, Marcos observed, a hint of surprise in his tone. Moving faster than expected. He went to the stove and returned with a cup of herbal tea. Red raspberry leaf. Helps with labor. Sarah took it gratefully. Uh, you just have that lying around? It's good for a number of medicinal purposes. A faint smile touched his lips. 6 centimeters, he announced. Good progress. By nightfall, the contractions were coming every 3 minutes. Sarah gripped the edge of the bed, sweat matting her hair. I don't know if I can do this. You're already doing it. His voice was steady, an anchor in the storm of pain. Your body knows what to do, trust it. A noise outside drew his attention to the window. Dusk had fallen, and with it came the sound of movement in the undergrowth, too deliberate for wildlife. They're back, Sarah whispered between contractions. Marcos moved swiftly to the window, peering out cautiously. One person, on watch. He picked up his rifle, positioning it nearby but out of sight of the windows. Then he returned to Sarah, helping her through another contraction as if there had been no interruption. Breathe deep. That's it. The contractions intensified further, now only a minute apart. Sarah cried out, unable to hold back the sound. I need to push. Marcos examined her again. Not yet. Almost, but not yet. Breathe through the urge to push. The noise outside stopped abruptly. Marcos tensed, listening. They heard you. I can't be quiet, Sarah gasped as another peak hit her. Don't try, let them hear you. It might even work in our favor. How? She managed to ask between breaths. Few things are more terrifying than a woman in labor, Marcos said, the faint smile returning. Even hardened men tend to keep their distance. As if in answer, the footsteps outside retreated toward the tree line. Marcos nodded in satisfaction. See? Tactical advantage. Sarah would have laughed if another contraction hadn't consumed her. This one was different. An overwhelming, irresistible urge to bear down. Marcos, she panted. It's time. He checked her one last time, then nodded, all trace of humor gone. You're right. 10 centimeters. On the next contraction, you push. Outside, darkness had fallen completely. The watcher had retreated, but Marcos knew they hadn't gone far. Inside, a new life was about to be born. Two forces, creation and threat, were converging on this small cabin in the middle of nowhere. Ready? Marcos asked, positioning himself to guide the baby's arrival. Sarah nodded, gathering her strength as the next wave began to build. Push, he instructed calmly. Bring your child into the world. The sound of shattering glass broke the concentrated intensity of the delivery room. Marcos's head snapped toward the back window, where a gloved hand was now reaching through a jagged hole, fumbling for the lock. Sarah, keep pushing, he instructed calmly, his voice belying the urgency of his movements as he moved swiftly toward the intruder. With remarkable upper body strength, Marcos launched himself from his chair, using the momentum to seize the intruding arm and twist it sharply. A cry of pain erupted from outside as Marcos slammed the arm against the window frame, forcing the fingers to release a hunting knife that clattered to the floor. Sarah screamed with another contraction, her focus torn between the demands of her body and the struggle at the window. I'm here, Marcos called to her, maintaining his grip on the intruder while reaching for the rifle with his free hand. Keep going. You're doing great. The intruder wrenched his arm free, disappearing from the broken window. Marcos quickly wedged a metal toolbox into the opening, then returned to Sarah's side, the rifle now in his lap. That was impressive, Sarah gasped between contractions. Combat training. Upper body strength compensates. He positioned himself to continue assisting the birth, keeping a clear line of sight to all points of entry. Focus on pushing now. Muffled voices murmured outside. Several of them. The intruder hadn't come alone. How many? Sarah asked. Her teeth gritted as another contraction swelled. 3, maybe 4. Marcos's voice remained steady. Don't you worry about them. Hard not to, she managed, bearing down with the contraction. They're not getting in. His certainty was a comfort. Not while I'm here. The baby's head is crowning. I can see it, Marcos announced, his professional detachment momentarily broken by awe. One more big push.